Hi, I'm Casey Fiesler. I'm professor in the Department of Information Science, and I'm a content creator. So is everyone else in this room, I'm guessing, even if you're not writing a book or recording music. Maybe a tweet, or a Yelp review, comment on a news article, even though I know we've been trying to avoid those lately. But once we've put this content out into the world, do we think about what can happen to it then? Who controls it? Who owns it? What can other people do with it? And these aren't simple questions. It's this mixture of law and policy, social norms, and ethics. And sometimes those rules even disagree. So first, let's talk about Twitter again. Everybody loves Twitter. Here's one of my recent tweets. So who owns this tweet? Is it me? Is it Twitter? Is it a thing that can't be owned? So the answer is a little complicated. Copyright law says that I probably own it, but when I agree to Twitter's terms of service, I have to give them some rights to use it. So have you read Twitter's terms of service? I'm guessing not, and you're not alone. Not that it would matter anyway. I've done some research about this. Barely anyone reads terms of service, and if they did, it wouldn't matter. Most, like this one, are written 3, 4, 5, 6,000 words. And at the grade level of a college sophomore. In fact, if you want to understand the terms of service of Craigslist or LinkedIn, then you need a PhD. But that click-through gives Twitter certain rights. But how about how other people can use your content? If you've seen mean tweets on Jimmy Kimmel, did you ever wonder if they get permission from these Twitter users? Or are they just watching Jimmy Kimmel one night? Oh my gosh, there's Mark Ruffalo reading my tweet. And then suddenly their Twitter feed is full of people either telling them they're cool or awful, depending on just how mean the tweet was. Or this kind of thing. 15 people who don't know the Titanic actually sank. Most of these people have maybe a couple hundred Twitter followers. And they went from thinking that was their audience, their friends, to instead the entire readership of BuzzFeed. And of course, part of the way we might think about this answer is, well, Twitter is public, obviously, we know that. You have no expectation of privacy. This is a search I did yesterday, more people with Titanic revelations. But people do have an expectation of privacy. There's research that shows that on all social media, users vastly underestimate their audience. So my tweet about Supergirl from a couple of days ago has 10 likes, but a lot more people than that saw it, and that number goes up by a lot if it's a public Facebook post. On average, people will guesstimate about 25% of the actual number of people who read their social media content. Here's another example. I recently did a study where I found out from Twitter users how they feel about researchers using their tweets. And by that I mean people like me. Here's a data set of people talking about free speech on Twitter. It was very easy to get. Twitter is a huge source of data, not only for data scientists, but for people studying anything, sociologists, psychologists, communication people. So there's this huge amount of data available to anyone about how people talk and feel and interact. Scholarly work about Twitter itself, epidemiology, politics, or how we tweet differently after we get engaged. Also, Yelp reviews, public Facebook posts, Flickr photos, Instagram. I even published a paper using data from the YouTube help forums to talk about how people get copyright law wrong. Of course, what I found out was that most people have absolutely no idea that this can happen, which makes sense, because if you scrape a million tweets, you're probably not going to tell everyone about it afterwards. But should we be? It's one of the things I'm thinking about. It's another example of this entanglement between law, policies, norms, ethics that I mentioned at the start. Because copyright law says that using tweets and researchers is probably OK under fair use. Twitter's terms of service actually explicitly warns users that researchers might use their tweets, but as we know, you guys don't read it, neither does anyone else. But social norms could be very different. How do you think Twitter users feel about it? I think that's really important, which is why I've been talking to users themselves so that what we learn can inform better ethical practice among researchers. So we don't make mistakes like, for example, a researcher recently released a public data set of all of OkCupid. which he might have said, it's public, so I didn't break any rules, but I can guarantee you that OkCupid users didn't feel that way. And even if you don't use Twitter or post other content publicly, you might wonder about the control and ownership of your content. This is our awesome information science faculty. Jed Brubaker, who you're going to hear from next, he and I are working on how people think about the ownership of their group photos on Facebook. So what rights do each of us have in this photo? Like, if Jed thinks he looks bad, could he have Facebook take it down? Or does Leisha have more rights because she's the one taking the selfie, but she's actually using my camera, so maybe I'm the one who controls this photo? The weird thing is, the answers to these questions differ when it comes to policy, so things like copyright law, or architecture, the way that Facebook works under the hood and tells you who can do what. So the reason that we're thinking about this is because we want to be able to craft policies and design architectures that work with the way that people actually think about ownership. I've been studying the role of copyright law in online communities for a long time, and it's hard. It's gray, it's complicated. And I went to law school for 3 years, and I can't even tell you the answers to most of the questions people ask me about weird things. So in making decisions about how law should work, who's actually being impacted from it? The law doesn't really inform user behavior much because they don't understand it. Neither do policies because they don't read them. So when we're thinking about how we should craft policies, how we should design things where things like the law matters, instead we should be thinking about the people, social norms, and ethics. And I'll leave you with one more thing, which is please don't delete your Twitter account because of this talk. I tweet a lot. I just tend to think that the entire readership of BuzzFeed might be there sometimes.